most of us going through a spiritual awakening can become overwhelmed by the totality of our task, or we might get lost in even what exactly the end game to awakening is. So today I'm going to be breaking down the end game. While we begin to expand our consciousness more, we start to see that awakening itself is an ever-unfolding journey. So if it's an ever-unfolding journey, then what would the end game be, and how much responsibility is it for us to awaken? And where do we go with that? So it's really important for us to understand our position in the cosmos, for us to begin to start having the clarity we need to know what our role is. Because when we know our position, then we can know our role inside this whole journey. And what that would be is to look at us as though we are the boots on the ground units of our higher self. And that even our higher self has a larger aspect of itself. So our higher self even has a higher self. And what our higher self is our oversoul. If you'd like to know more about the oversoul, you can watch my video on that titled The Oversoul Explained. So we have an oversoul, and then from there, we have a higher self that we are the representative of at this level of reality. So we are the traveling soul that is currently here in the third dimension, where there is maximum fragmentation. In the third dimension, light vibrates so slow that we experience ourselves as separate from our reality. Because the third dimension is maximum fragmentation and maximum separation. As we awaken and become more aware, we begin to receive more spirit and more essence from our higher self. This is the point to a spiritual awakening. It is to expand our consciousness wide enough to begin to merge with the higher self. The point to a spiritual awakening is to unite soul with spirit. Another way of saying this is a spiritual awakening journey is the journey to expand consciousness that will allow us to receive more of our higher self's essence that cannot normally fit inside the third dimension because of how slow and condensed light vibrates here. So we're the most compact, compressed fractal of the oversoul that has just individual extensions of consciousness or of a soul unit. And within that, we can look at that like, as I said, boots on the ground. We're the physical individuated expression. And that's very important to know that that's our position in relationship to the higher self, which is our more multidimensional aspect. So the higher self is the more multidimensional aspect, and then you have the oversoul. And it's very important to know that fractal position, because nothing else when it comes to an endgame is going to make sense unless we understand that fractal expression. The fractal expression goes the oversoul, the higher self, and then you start getting individual souls. And if we want to get really technical, the higher self would be the personal Akashic records, the personal Akashic library of one soul. So if I have a higher self and I'm the boots on the ground fractal expression of the oversoul and of the higher self, then my higher self would be my own personal journeys, Akashic records and Akashic library, just for all of the experiences that is being expressed right now through my individual soul stream. And so everyone has their higher self that has their own personal Akashic library and Akashic records for each of their own multidimensional journey. And so when it comes to, back again, we're awakening, we're starting to expand our consciousness, we're starting to realize that we are more than just our own personal avatar, and that we are more than just our own personal name and our own individual ego. We can start going, okay, well, how much of the capacity for even more awakening am I responsible for? And what the heck do I do with all of this moving out of this reality once it's my time to cross over? And so what's very important to know right now is that when we are doing any sort of awareness, any sort of expanding our own consciousness, becoming more aware of our reality, both the negative aspects, the positive aspects, the nuance, when we are strengthening our discernment, when we are doing inner work, when we are becoming more emotionally intelligent, all of these things go into what's called integration. All of the integration that we're doing is essentially just having, like, pretend we're a magnet. All of that healing work, all the different ways that we just integrate is like a magnet that starts calling forth to us all the different pieces of our own individual consciousness that are here in the third dimension. So anything that we are not aware of, we technically, as long as we are sincere and we're doing the best we can while we're healing, we are technically not responsible for having to go and be hyper-vigilantly aware of every single thing that we need to salvage, reclaim, become aware of in order to integrate. Because the universe brings us, the universe designs us to be in situations where whatever we're feeling in that moment, or whatever we're becoming aware of in that moment, is acting like a magnet. We are magnetizing everything into our experience, just like how there's the law of attraction. The law of attraction is we're a magnet. We're attracting things. What's being attracted? The things that are being attracted to us, which is why we're calling them forth with our magnetism, is whatever will make us our higher self. Because our higher self is trying to be embodied. And so we can look at this like a separate entity, but then we will get really confused about it. Just imagine that your embodiment of your higher self this lifetime isn't an entity trying to get through to you and use your vessel. Instead, it's your highest version of yourself. So your higher self is not embodied. It is the pure potential. It has so much wisdom. It's very full. It's very whole. That's where the term holy comes from. It's like no higher density beings that are of a positive orientation or even a beneficial orientation are half. That's why they're called holy. Okay? So when we have these higher expressions of self that are wanting to be embodied, it's really for our own benefit and it's for our own journey. If a person is afraid of embodiment, then it's simply not for them. Because when a person truly wants to awaken and heal and be their best version and has that amount of self-love, it's no longer a fearful concept. That's not even the reality that this is all perceived in. So that's the good news. If you don't want to embody your higher self, you're not close to it and you don't have to worry about it. But if a person does want to expand enough into their awakening and they're confused as to what exactly they're expanding into and what the end game is, there's two. The higher self wants to be embodied, which is just as I said, the soul's alignment with growth, the soul's alignment with evolution. Because at that point, there's no confliction of wills. The willpower of us and our individual ego and the willpower of the higher self don't have separate wills. They have aligned. So it's not about surrendering our willpower to a higher willpower or one willpower overpowering the other. Those happen at earlier stages of awakening. But by the time somebody truly wants to understand what their role is and what their position is in evolution and awakening, that has already been reconciled and there's no longer a battle or a clash of wills. So at this point, what we want wants us. If we want to embody our higher self gave us that wish, gave us that intention. There's just beautiful synchronicity, because the higher order of this universe is synchronicity. So if we're in alignment with something, like wanting to evolve and embody our higher self, and then from there have our higher self's journey unfold into a larger one, then that we're not being used. That's just an alignment of wills. And that's how the universe truly operates. The endgame to this whole process of spiritual awakening is different for each soul's individual journey. It will depend on what best serves the higher self's intention. Some souls will want to continue transitioning to the fifth density New Earth timeline, where they will continue to follow the course of human evolution and the ascension timeline, while other souls will be shifting their focus away from Gaia's ascension altogether, so that their higher self can now choose whatever next experiences it would need in order for the higher self to integrate back into the oversoul. The end game for the higher self's journey is to ultimately reunite into its higher aspect, the oversoul, where it makes its way back to the monad. We're in a dimension right now and a level, a frequency of consciousness right now, where we can perceive and we can act out a whole bunch of different conflicts simply because we don't have this higher capacity for consciousness. Because once you have a higher capacity for consciousness, you can start organizing everything into synchronicities, into situations where there's no conflict involved. So the first sign is that the higher self wants us to get out of separation consciousness, because separation consciousness is what is the fuel. It's the gas. It's the engine of war. It's the engine of the victim-perpetrator cycle. So we can't embody our higher self if we believe still that we are separate from every other extension of people, of our environment, of people even far away from us in another country suffering. None of that can exist in the higher states of consciousness, where a being has that level of perception, that level of awareness and responsibility to be able to understand that they are the world is themselves. And so with that, now we start beginning the deeper inner work. So everyone has their own journey. Everybody has their own methods and modalities and techniques for healing. So this isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. There are stronger things and there are stronger ways we can heal than others. So I'm not saying all of them are exactly equal, but for the most part, we all have our own individual journeys. When it comes to being the magnet that is calling forth all of the different aspects of ourself that we are unaware of or that need the light of our love. So there are aspects of us we're not aware of that are calling forth the light of our love. And our love is our awareness. So they want the light of our awareness. They want the light of our love. They want to get into our love. And if you'd like to know more about this topic, about what exactly is trying to get into the love of our being and our awareness, you can watch my video on it, The Doom Imprint, because the Doom Imprint, in all of the many ways it manifests inside our reality, whether we know it or not, are the parts of us that are desperately trying to reconnect with us, and they want the love of our awareness. So that's what we're magnetizing. That's why we get things that we want if it's in alignment already with our higher self's intention, which is to be embodied, which is for us to be the embodiment of the higher self. And so when we're manifesting, even if a manifestation isn't in alignment with this higher intention, then even that might not be able to be attracted into what we're magnetizing, because our higher self is pulling a stronger magnet for the things in our experience that is going to attract it into us, attract us to be a more mature version of consciousness, attract into us to be a more responsible, a more powerful, a more loving, a more open, to be the full merger of the higher intellect of awareness with the open and awakened heart center in physical form. So the physical expression, the physical reality, is where embodiment happens because it's the earth element. So this is the stage of our own evolution and of our higher self and our oversoul's own evolution. It all is interdependent and interconnected with us, the boots on the ground, because we're in what's called an alchemy salt. We're in the physical expression. We're an earth element. So we're the one that crystallizes. We make it real. That's what crystallization means. It's to physically organize something. So we're in the earth element, in the physical expression, because we are here to literally crystallize the higher consciousness and bring it into the physical vessel. So once that happens, that's what we're calling integration. Integration in this lifetime doesn't end, but at the same time, there's such a thing as not being neurotic about it. We don't have to actually worry and track and be anxious about exactly how much we consolidated or organized into integration. We do the best that we can, knowing that a part of healing, a true sign of healing and of integrating, is releasing the neurosis and releasing the fear or anxiousness or lower frequency thought and mental chatter that would even make you feel the pressure and the distance and the separation of thinking that you did it wrong. So the paradox is, once you're no longer worried about if you integrated enough this lifetime and did it right, but you're still healing and integrating, that's how you would best be able to marker and best be able to gauge how much you've helped your higher self and your higher self has helped you. So with that, I want you to look at everything beyond that point of what I've mentioned about healing and integrating. Now, through the lens of a relay race. So if the end game in all of this is for us to consolidate and us to integrate enough so that now we have aligned our will with our higher self's will, become our higher self's embodiment, therefore we have merged. Now think of that merger that I'm talking about, where we're embodying our higher self as like a small Russian doll within a larger Russian doll. Because you know those Russian doll sets, how one is in a larger one, is in a larger one, is in a larger one. Those are fractals. We're fractals. So our fractal, I call it soul unit. Our unit now gets integrated into the larger Russian doll. So now our fractal goes inside the larger fractal. And that would be what our consciousness, what our individual journey is responsible for. So that's our position in the cosmos. We're boots on the ground. And what we're responsible for is doing the inner work this lifetime to the best of our ability. Being able to awaken into unity consciousness, and then from there, integrate and stabilize our humanity with our divinity. This isn't about ignoring our humanity in favor for the divinity. And that is probably where people get the most lost in what we're supposed to do this life. And many of us spend the majority of our time after we've gone through a level of awakening into now, how can I get as far away from the parts of me that are not as enlightened as I am now? When in reality, we move into that and we go into integration. The reason why integration is so important is because of this next step to the end game that I will be covering. And that is when we align with and therefore embody our higher self to the best of our ability. Now, our higher self is going to have the baton passed to them as though this was all a relay race. And so if we just worry about whatever we're responsible for in this lifetime, in our individual journey, in our individual ego and the stories around us that we have magnetized into our awareness, and all the different lessons that those stories contain, and all the different ways that they are either helping us or helping to dissolve some sort of pattern or boundary or block or judgment within ourselves. That would be like holding a baton and running as fast as you could to give your higher self a really good head start. That's what we're responsible for. We are not responsible for what our higher self's journey has to do from there. Aren't you all relieved? Now the higher self takes the baton from there and it goes the next leg of the race. It's responsible for that part of the race. A lot of us here going through an awakening are in unnecessary anxiety and overwhelm because they're worried about a job that they don't have to do this lifetime. All we have to do is what we're responsible for here to the best of our ability. So what's ever beyond this point is not your responsibility. It is so much not your responsibility that it would behoove you and greatly benefit you to actually place all of that worry and anxiety about what is not your responsibility and your higher self's responsibility and move it into how much more quality of life and presence we can bring into our journey here and not worried about what our higher self has to do from there. Because all of us, the oversoul, the higher self, and the soul, are all just different points of the present moment. So all three of us are different extensions of one another, and we are all interconnected and interdependent on one another. And if we're interdependent, that means that we don't have to worry about all of the other parts of the journey. If we're interdependent, then that means that our higher self and our oversoul really has a strong intention for us that we're responsible for. We could look at it like they're dependent on us for this, which is why they give us a lot of resources energetically to magnetize certain things to us, because we do have a role in this, and there is a level of dependency. But the beauty is the interdependency means that even though we're responsible for something, we're not responsible for the whole thing. It gives us the opportunity to intensify our level of presence here when we're not worried about the other parts of the journey that the higher self and the oversoul is responsible for once we pass the baton to the higher self. So knowing that we have one leg of the journey that we're responsible for in this relay race, and knowing that the best we can do to set up our higher self so that the higher self got a clean head start, then the rest is taken care of from there, and we don't have to worry about that. And that's when surrender would be a really great idea. And that would also give us the optimal health that we would need in order to see our interconnection and our interdependence on our whole energy field, or all the aspects of our consciousness. And so with that, another way of saying all of this, another paradigm we could look at all of this through, is that if you are sincere and you are actively becoming aware of that which you are unaware of, and you are actively being open to that which you need to heal and that which you need to understand are like overarching themes in life, overarching challenges, if you're doing all of that work with sincerity, then the universe will bestow on you grace. So all of this can also be looked at just as if you are sincere and doing the work, then grace will come in and it will take your hand from there. I hope this has helped give you a head start. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for higher dimensional guidance through spiritual awakening. See you next time.